We are live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg, and we're ready to engage with you on matters that affect you, matters that affect your family, matters that affect your community. Tonight, health services and protests. Why, you ask? Because it's topical. A very good evening to South Africa and those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. Kani, our digital audience, please. There you go. Good to have them on the program. And as always, and as I say every week, digital audience, please put up your virtual hand if you have any questions, any comments for our guests. I'll do my very best to get you on air. Protests striking at the heart of healthcare. Question: is it morally justifiable for healthcare workers to go on strike? What does our Constitution say? Everyone has a right to have access to healthcare services, including reproductive healthcare services. And no one, maybe you refused emergency medical treatment. That's a basic human right, guaranteed in the Constitution. What about the right to protest? What does it say? Everyone has a right to protest peacefully and unarmed, to assemble and to demonstrate, to picket and to present petitions. So, having said that, how do you marry the two, right? The right to raise your concerns and at the same time not infringing on someone else's basic human rights. We call on those who are on strike to continue to put the interests and lives of our people ahead of everything else. Those are not my words. Those are the words of President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking during the question and answer session in the National Assembly. So, is it a case of just because you have the right to do something doesn't make it the right thing to do? We will explore this. We have both sides of the argument tonight and a number of people to make the case. We will get their take in a short while, which leads us to the question of the week. And we are asking you, how can healthcare workers exercise their legitimate right to express their grievances in a meaningful way, right, without endangering lives? Come, follow me. With regards to the issue of, well, let's talk about the minimum service agreement. That's a big thing, right? And it is coming at a time where it's now becoming sharp focus. What are the pros? What are the cons? The right to strike versus its impact on society. Have your say. It's topical. Perspective coming up. Now it's time for your roundup. All right, South African rapper Costa Titch collapsed and died while performing at the Ultra Music Festival at the Expo Center in Johannesburg last night. He had big hit singles like Big Flexer in Kalakata, as well as Activate, and was gaining popularity in the amapiano genre. He was just 28 years old. The hitmaker had also signed a global deal with the Senegalese-American star Akon's record label Convict Culture. In an official statement on Titch Gang Records, sadness was expressed at Konstantinos Sobanoglou's passing. That's his name. Emergency responders and all those present during his last hours were thanked, and the industry has reacted with shock. The other story, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says the late Free State Education MEC Tate Makwe almost became a victim of the ANC's factional battles. Makwe was sidelined in the ANC's provincial conference in January when he was not voted into the provincial executive committee. Mbalula says the ANC was in the process to co-opt Makwe into the PEC. Speaker after speaker described Makwe as an exemplary man and an epitome of excellence who advocated for quality education. He was laid to rest in Bloemfontein today. Makwe died together with his protector last Sunday after a vehicle they were traveling in drove into two cars, we understand, on the N1 near Wynberg.
Tate Makwe was the best of the ANC. And when we say we have lost, we know what we mean. And when we stood to defend the decision to bring him back to government, we know what we mean. We have indeed lost, but we've got to pick up the baton and run with it.
Right, to our main story of tonight. The National Health and Allied Workers Union has vowed to intensify their national strike action over wages in week 2 of demonstrations. This as the Labour Appeal Court is expected to hand down judgment tomorrow over an appeal of government's move to interdict the strike. Nehawu says negotiations at the Bargaining Council to try to bring the strike to an end have failed as workers continue with their call for a 10% wage increase, announcing that other Kasatu unions in the public sector will this week join in the demonstrations.
With this arrogance displayed by government, it is important to confirm that Nehawu continues with the strike in a more intensified manner as from tomorrow, Monday, the 13th March 2023, to demonstrate to government the seriousness with which we take the concerted efforts to underplay the role and the significance of public servants who are at the coalface of service delivery.
As you know, on this program, we would like you to have your say. We go to our Word on the Street feature now, where you will have your say on the matter that we're discussing in terms of Nehawu's strike, its effect on healthcare services. This week, we visited Soweto and Coronation to hear your views about the Nehawu strike. Let's listen.
What we are saying, Oguti, the government must hear our cries so that we can provide a better service to our patients. We're not killing the patients.
Community. So if we destroy our own community, what are we saying about it? These are our own facilities. Again, we signed oaths that will work for the government. So the government must just be lenient and hear our cry. We're not compromising in pillows about abo sis betu, abo put betu, abo mama betu. They need the health ilon, ama services wait. And the community they must also back us up.
Maobani kilikile nchunchuke straight on. So kaba kensa strike ga ke akena. Nna ga ke gane strike ka gore ga ke tsebe gore why. Mare problem ke ya batho ba ba kula. Ha o kula nna ne ke re ba ise strike ba se ka ba khanela batho mo hospital.
If government nina how bangadibana bathethe balungisele into lena because just affect nangoku khona umakhulu wami besesibhedlele le bamjikisile bathi ngeke bamncede because akunabantu abenza amafile akunabantu abenza ntoni so this affect kakhulu strikes.
Why don't they just stay at home? It will still affect the services. Then to come and stand and burn, they are proving nothing. They are our community people around there. Their windows is black, their curtains is black of the smoke. So that's why we've got to be angry. They're making us angry.
We don't say they mustn't toy. Whatever issues they have with the government, it's got nothing to do with us in the community. They must sort it out in their own way. Don't burn tires. I mean, it's not nice. I mean, our elderly people are afraid even to go to shop now because their lives is at stake here. They are burning tires. Huh? No, man, I think let's do it nice, man.
All right, welcome back. We're talking about Nehawu's strike and its impact on healthcare services. I want to give you context. According to Stats SA, the General Household Survey a couple of years ago, and it showed that only 17 in 100 South Africans have medical insurance. What does that mean? Well, it means that as many as 45 million, or 82 out of 100, every 100 South Africans fall outside of the medical aid net, and as a result are largely dependent on public health care. So you can see why the slightest, even the slightest disruption in public health care facilities can become a major concern. Let's bring in the people in the know. We welcome back our digital audience as well. In studio, we have health activist, Dr. Kgosi Letlape. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Appreciate your time. We also have on Zoom, I'm told, Percy Matlati, Deputy Director General for Hospital Services National Health Department. He'll be popping up in a short while. And just to remind you that we did invite Nehawu to the program, the president, Nehawu's president, and we were told that they had a last-minute emergency, well, not emergency, urgent, that was the word they used, urgent meeting. What is this meeting all about? We're hoping to bring them during the course of the show to find out what that meeting is all about. Outcomes, content, stick around. We're going to get their take as well in a short while. Doctor, to you first. The tone and tenor of the strike over the past week and the actions thereof, did that surprise you?
Good evening to you and to the viewers. Yes and no. We would expect better from organized labor, just in terms of conduct. We understand the grievances, but the methods are not acceptable. We cannot obstruct South Africans that need care from getting care. We cannot obstruct those that work in public service and are upholding their oath to serve, not to be allowed to go to work or to have their lives endangered. And what is distressing is the fact that there hasn't been significant security presence. South African police services. The securities in the hospitals are not sufficient to deal with the challenges that they have faced in the past week, and would like to see the state come to the party.
Would you like to see, some have been calling for the SANDF, I know they have a medical wing as well. Would you like to see them on the ground during this period?
I think it is the duty of the employer to ensure that the employees are safe. And it's the duty of the state to ensure that South Africans are safe. If the police can't come to the party and don't have the resources or are not willing to assist, then you got to default to the military to provide services. Remember that the military health services is helping with the operational issues, the service issues inside the hospitals. And we're grateful that they've been mobilized by the National Minister of Health. But for security, you need the defense force if the police can do the job. What we cannot do is on our small budget to be bringing in private security at great cost to the centers that don't have enough money for the services that need to be rendered.
Right. So you would agree with the principle of protests, but not at the expense of society?
It is a right of anyone, as you have stated earlier, to strike. But it's a responsibility when we are in essential services that there has to be an agreement between the employees and their representative structures and the employer in terms of ensuring that essential services will not be interrupted.
Right.
And I think there is that
talks to the minimum service agreement.
The minimum level service agreement. And I think
why is that not in place? Or is it in place?
It's failure of negotiation. But I think we've seen that it's a security measure. It's a safety measure for healthcare workers. It's an access issue. It's a matter of life and death for citizens that need services. And we need to ensure that that agreement is signed. You know, it's pointless spending money going to courts with interdicts to say people must not act violently when we know that they shouldn't act violently. What is equally distressing is the fact that we seem to be a society that does not respect the rule of law. It looks like we don't even have structures to enforce the rule of law. What is being done by those that strike is unlawful actions. And the law officers should be visible and present to ensure that they allow people to strike, but they must strike peacefully. There should be no violence. There should be no destruction of property. There should be no intimidation.
I've heard this, Doc, I've heard this sentiment being expressed before, and not only in this strike, but other strikes as well. I can't get my employer's attention. I can't get government's attention unless I perform or act in a certain way. You are pushing me into a corner whereby I feel that the only way to get your attention is to do 1, 2, 3. You agree with that understanding or process of thought?
I'm not in the front line. Unfortunately, I'm a medical doctor, and we don't have the numbers to have direct representation in the public service bargaining chamber, something that we've lamented about for years. In other countries, there would be special dispensation that is created so that healthcare professionals can talk directly to the employer. In South Africa, they do it for magistrates, but they won't do it for the medical profession.
Right.
So we don't have the numbers for direct representation. So the participation will be through other health-related unions like DINOSA. I mean, I chaired the South African Medical Association. We sat in the CC of COSATU, but we came there because we were invited and we were allowed to sit there by DINOSA. So in terms of South African law, as medical doctors, we're not worthy to have representation in a public service bargaining chamber. But that having been said, and the fact that, we don't seem to respect our healthcare professionals in this country. We treat them with disdain. We don't give them proper working environments. But those issues can be discussed some other day. The fact that it's more than 2 decades that we've been battling to have a minimum level service agreement says there's something wrong. Because even when there were agreements on wages, why would there not be an agreement on ensuring that you can exercise your right to strike safely, that the workers would be safe, that the patients would be safe, and that there would be civility and infrastructure would be protected? Why are we failing to have that basic agreement signed? It is not acceptable.
Right.
So what probably is needed is an executive order from the head of state, who is a previous trade unionist, to say, I want this done yesterday. I mean, we have a minister of public service, and this needs to be done. And one of the things that is frustrating is that we have a willing and capable minister of health. But the issues of wage negotiations can't be done with the minister of health. They are done elsewhere. And we're not seeing the public service minister speaking on these issues. And I mean, they are endangering...
With the argument that I just got this post now, give me some time. Does that fly with you?
No, it doesn't fly. There's this thing of I've just got this post now. This is a ministry that has been running. When there's a handover to a political colleague, it must be handed over to you because you can hit the ground running. You must have proper briefing of what the urgent issues are. And remember also that the people, the officers that sit in the bargaining chamber, the employees of the Public Service Commission are still there. They didn't go with the last minister. So this is the minister can get a briefing from a previous incumbent as to where the issue was at, where that minister was at. So the issue of I've just come on is not acceptable.
I must clarify that the minister didn't say that. Just for the sake of argument, I put it to you in that regard. Let me bring in, I understand that we have Nehawu President Mike Shingange with us as well as Dr. Percy Mahlati, Deputy Director General for Hospital Services, National Health Department. So to the Nehawu President first. Mike, we understand that you were called into an urgent meeting. Can you brief us in terms of the content and outcome of this meeting?
Good evening, and to the other guests. I apologize, I joined this interview a bit late, so I might not have started. So what do you mean by urgent meeting? Urgent meeting by who?
So we were told that you couldn't join us at the top of the hour because the leaders of Nehawu were locked into a meeting. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. We've been having various meetings, not only today, but since Thursday.
Yes.
Remember that even before the strike started, we've been trying to reach out to the people that matters into resolving these matters. Since the new minister came in, we tried to engage with her, continued engaging with her, including the facilitation process that was started by the Minister of Labour through the CMA, but of course brought back the PSCPC because that's where this matter must be resolved. So yes, that was a meeting that we are busy on. I'm not sure if that's what you say I must brief you about.
Yes.
But the meetings are ongoing because it's about making sure that the facilitation process that seeks to end the strike should not collapse. So the meeting we were having with the minister was to ensure that part, because there was a possibility and an indication that which we thought is a progressive move to try and resolve the deadlock and the impasse was being undermined and frustrated somewhere else. So that's what we're impressing on the minister, for her to back up politically the negotiators from the state, together with the negotiators from the union, to try and resolve the issues.
And what was her response?
Look, she has come across, since we started engaging with her, as a person that is politically willing to resolve this. In fact, her attitude was that we should have resolved this thing latest Friday. But of course, she's not working alone. She's making with the state. There's a whole lot of cabinet ministers who have got their own interests, probably different from hers. Remember, she's new. This dispute arose when she was not part of the system, particularly the system in the negotiating processes. So she has to consult all over the place. She has to be given all sorts of briefings, and there will be people who know that they are responsible for what we find ourselves in today. That they will not want to look like they failed. They will not want to look like they misled the public. Therefore, they will want to defend their positions and the postures they've held for the past 3 years, which is why workers today are out on the street. So we think that's the process. So all we're saying, we're giving a fact that she must back up her politically, so her negotiators to try and resolve this impasse as soon as yesterday.
All right. Control, let me know when Dr. Mahlati is back. I want to put in some questions with him. Doctor, stand by. So I just wanted to ask you one more question with regards to your pronouncements earlier today about the strike continuing and intensifying, I think is the word that was used. What does intensify mean practically on the ground?
Intensified means that it will be intense than it was before, because we had sincerely and honestly hoped that we will not have got to Friday. At worst, we will not have passed the weekend without having found a solution, because we have started engaging with the state. But what we have seen the state to be interested in, it is not the resolution of these issues, it's to intensify the efforts to crush the strike. I'm sure you know now that there are roadblocks set up everywhere else leading to the entrances of the workplaces where we work. We know that there's what is called a strike strategic meeting that took place. That is saying that no one will be allowed to wear a union regalia tomorrow. Otherwise, soldiers are going to throw you out of whatever transport you are using, as long as you are found to be wearing a regalia of a union. That's what the state is interested in doing. It's interested in crushing the strike, crushing the workers, defeating them, taking them back to work, kicking and screaming, without resolving the real issue why the workers, this time around, like ever before, are so determined and frustrated and angry. Nobody's interested to want to find what is the reason. What they are interested in is to crush the strike.
Does intensify...
So intensification means that we are going to be doing things that we may have not have done previously in terms of mobilizing all the workers. I'm sure you know now that there are workers and unions that were not part of the strike last week that are joining the strike tomorrow. That's what the intensification means.
So you'll have bigger numbers. Does intensifying mean that you will be blocking entrances, stopping workers who want to work from working, public that want to access healthcare? Does that mean that you will be blocking that?
Intensification means that more and more workers will be joining the strike. That's what it means. More and more workers will be mobilized to be part of the strike. More and more workers will withdraw their labor from where they work, and more unions are going to be joining the strike.
But those who want to work, will they be allowed to work?
Allowed by who? We never prevented anyone from working.
Union members. You can guarantee that there won't be any intimidation in terms of those that want to work.
We have no authority over those who are not part of the strike. We don't. We have authority to lead the workers who have taken a decision to go on strike, to assist them to picket in front of the workplaces that they work in. Because their strike, it's about picketing, it's about protesting, it's about withdrawing your labor where you work. And when you withdraw labor, you go out of the workplace, you find a picket space, you picket line. And those picket lines and the picket rules have been agreed upon the date we agreed in the conciliation that the matters that we are on dispute about are not resolved. The picket rules, before the commissioner issued the certificate, there were picket rules that were drafted, agreed upon. Those are the picket rules that we are going to be adhering to.
Right. Let me bring in Dr. Percy Mahlati from the National Health Department. I hope you heard what the Nehawu president had to say with regards to the intensifying of the strike. What's the contingency measures being put in place for this week? If you can unmute, Doc. Let's try.
I hope you
loud and clear. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. First, I would like to say what my colleague here, Mr. Shingage, said about, picketing and all that. From Monday, the 6th of March, up to yesterday and a bit of today, but mainly Monday to Friday, it is not our experience. There's been active intimidation of workers, total blockade of hospitals, and I can mention many hospitals. Some of them were basically brought to their knees. Charlotte Maxeke, Bheki Mlangeni in Soweto, Telemukwerane, and so many across the country. So what the president of Nehawu is saying is absolutely not true. Now let me come to the issue, to the question that you have asked. Basically, always the challenge we have is that when there are strikes, the big problem actually comes with not the people that willingly join the strike, but those who actually get forced to join the strike for fear of being injured, fear of, being isolated, and so on and so on. So what we would normally do then would be to really the management and the clinicians at hospital level to actually say, how best do we make sure that we provide the services, which is supposed to be something that would have been in a minimum services agreement, which unfortunately we do not have at the present moment. And we would also monitor as to which hospitals are affected most, so that those that are affected most, we can then be able to divert patients to those that are not that affected. And if it means making arrangements with the private sector for emergency cases, then would actually do so and sort out the arrangements afterwards.
What about the security forces as well, in terms of safeguarding the passage for people to come and get health care? Are you having urgent conversations with the South African police, any other security agency, in order to ensure that?
Yes, we've had engagements with the senior management, the national commissioner, and our minister engaging with the minister of police also since Monday. And unfortunately, the response of the SABC members have been variable. And in instances where, for instance, you would find that a hospital is next to a police station, there is disturbance at the entrance of the hospital, but the police station, the SABC members at the police station would not actually take action, even when a public road is being, blocked, that actually leads to the hospital. So the engagement has been variable. But over the weekend, from Friday and onwards, those have been intensified. We've had good support from the South African military health services, who were able to deploy in very serious areas where, we identified. and kind of engage with the military so that they could be able to help us.
Lots more to discuss. Our digital audience are going to bring them in a short while. We're also going to get the response from the Nehawu president. We've got health activists here, Dr. Khosi Letlape, as well, to get his take. We're going to take a quick break. We'll get you more next. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. We're talking about the right to protest, but at the same time safeguarding patients who want to receive healthcare services from the public health facilities. Context, always important. This is our new magic call. Let's try it for you with regards to what we talk about, what we know and what we need to know. I want to talk to you about, the issue of the complete shutdown of operations. Now, we're told that in some cases, in terms of the operations, there was majority of the staff were not there. That's what we're told. Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Phaahla, was talking to us about 6 deaths. Now, he actually mentioned 6 in an interview with the SABC. And he was talking about that it was preliminary talk about or investigations that led to him saying that there were 6 deaths, not 4 anymore. That was linked to the healthcare services. So he was speaking to SA Today on Friday. This is what he had to say.
From the number which I mentioned of 4, late yesterday I was informed that there were 2 more deaths. So just in Gauteng, we're looking at 6, which preliminarily we are linking with the strike. That's the extreme situation, but other people chronic who must receive chronic medication, others who needed procedures, operations to be done, have had to be sent home. So the impact in terms of the inconvenience of pain and suffering is quite huge. The death is the extreme part, but a lot of pain and suffering.
All right, let's give you a national picture now in terms of the hospitals that were affected. And these are the provinces that in terms of countrywide, Gauteng, it had about 7 hospitals affected. Eastern Cape, you can see Letitia Balm, Cecilia, Makiwane as well. Free State, these are the hospitals that were affected. The Western Cape, Khayelitsha District Hospital, and here, the Northwest, among them, Moses Kotane as well. Now, when we look at the issue of the reported intimidation, as you heard the now president denying that there's been intimidation, the reporting suggests that in the Beki Mlangeni District Hospital in Soweto, striking workers went into wards and ordered the staff out of the facilities here, right? In KwaZulu-Natal, the General Justice Gizenga Mpanza Hospital, right, in Kwaduguza, we're told that protesters attacked an ambulance transporting a child who was in a critical condition. So that's basically reports that we got in terms of intimidation. Now, with regards to essential services, you've been listening to us talking about this, right? What does it mean? As defined in the Labor Relations Act, 1995, a service, the interruption of which endangers the life, personal safety or health of the whole or any part of the population. And in terms of Section 7110, as you can see, these two, right, parliamentary service as well as the South African Police Service are deemed to have the designated as essential services. So that is the context in which we talk about now. Let's go now to my colleague Hlela Mquqo. She is with the CEO of the Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital to unpack how the strike has actually started. That's actually started on Monday, has affected the hospital. Hlela, what are you listening to? What are you hearing on the ground?
Thank you so much, Blaine, and welcome to all the viewers. We are at Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital. I am with camera person Hlomla Hlangani. We are here to talk to the CEO of the hospital, Mrs. Gladys Bukhoshi. She's here to unpack how the strike has affected the hospital. She's telling us now that on Wednesday they had a total shutdown at the hospital. But she will tell us more about what really happened on the day and how were the patients and the staff members affected by all this. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening to you and the listeners.
Please tell us, who is on strike? Is it the nurses, the doctors, or the administration staff?
I think majority is the administration staff, but there were some health workers who were part of the strike. Majority of the people who were outside were not on strike. They were prevented from coming in through locking the gates and putting barriers on the road so that people cannot access the hospital.
What are the ramifications of all that barricading and people not being at work?
The difficulty is that when this happened, we had 900 patients who were already in the hospital that needed care of health workers, but not only health workers, the very support staff. As an example, we were unable to feed the patients in the morning because the kitchen and the people who have to move the food were not around. But at the same time, when you went to the labor ward, you use a lot of linen because it is quite a bloody procedure most of the time, but you also need the sets to be sterilized. So we had about 5 mothers who were ready for delivery, but there was only 1 nurse in the ward. And so at the end of the day, the nurse could not look after everybody, at the same time ensure that the vitals of the patients are taken, including the fact that some of them would want to go maybe to the bathroom. It meant that nurse had to do everything for those patients. And what that means is that they may miss an opportunity if the patient goes into a difficulty while they are doing other things that could have been done by the other people. The second issue is that we had about 84 patients in ICUs. Many of the ICUs, if they had 2 nurses, it was too many. And so the doctors who managed to get in at first had to actually double up and become nurses. They also had to become whatever. Many of them were changing nappies for the little ones in the critical care areas.
Dr. Pasha mentioned that there were hospitals that had fatalities. Are you one of those hospitals?
Not necessarily, because on that particular day, the challenge that we had in those 3, in the ICUs, we had 4 patients who needed resuscitation, which means they were in danger. Fortunately, in those wards, we had nurses who were highly specialized, including the matrons who took over the resuscitation of those patients, and we managed to save those patients.
Today, Nehawu had a press briefing and a meeting, and they said tomorrow they are going to intensify the strike. What are the security measures that you have in the hospital to ensure the safety of patients and the safety of the staff that needs to come into the hospital?
Unfortunately, it's a very difficult question because we rely on the people who are on strike to continue having their strike, but not barricade the road or the entrance to those who really need to, who feel that they would like to come and look after their patients. But secondly, health is an essential service. Remember, if you have a heart attack now, you can't wait until the strike is finished. You only have 1 chance to be able to be assisted in the hospital. And so we don't know what's going to happen. It could be anybody who is outside there, who is waiting for care, or somebody who is in the hospital who does need that care. So we don't have any other measures as the hospital. We rely on the security forces because at the end of the day, they are the ones who have the responsibility of keeping law and order in the country.
Mambukoshi, as health workers, do you think there are other ways that the health workers can voice their dissatisfactions on the issues that are burning in the hospitals and in their lives?
My understanding of a strike is that you could actually picket during your lunch times, or you could actually take turns to make sure that the wards are covered, or the areas in the hospital that need care need to be taken. The one notion that I need to bring to the attention of everybody is that the health system depends on everybody. If you have doctors and nurses on duty, but you don't have anybody to clean up, you may end up with that same patient dying from infection because the floors are not clean. So it's a very difficult one because workers have a right to go on strike. But remember, our country says everybody has a right to health care. So I don't know really how to balance the two. All I know is that when I'm sick, I need somebody to attend to me at that time.
Thank you so much, Mama. We highly appreciate your time. Well, Blaine, as you heard for yourself, that things are not looking good on the ground, and we are really hoping that when tomorrow comes, the solutions will be on the table, so that the people of South Africa can be able to get healthcare, and also the health workers can be able to have their issues and their concerns met by the government. With that having said, it's back to you, Blaine.
Hlela, important perspective there in terms of the state of play in that hospital. And you'll remember, if not too long ago, this hospital right here there was a fire here. They are still going through that. They are still recovering from that fire. Now they're dealing with this issue with regards to a strike. How do they cope? We will find out. Let's take it now to our better minds on our digital audience. Dr. Letlape is still with us. We also got the now president as well as Dr. Percy with us as well from the National Health Department. Let's go to our digital audience. Rich, if you can unmute, let's talk to you, sir. We understand that you are a healthcare professional. Is this the reality on the ground in terms of the workers that are complaining about the low wages and the conditions of work as well?
Exactly. Good evening to your team, to everyone as well in the viewers. Exactly, that is what it is, comrade. That is what it is. Healthcare workers in particular are tired. They are disgruntled. They are frustrated. We are always talking about gross shortage of staff, gross shortage of material resources. We are undermined, underpaid. We are not appreciated by our own government that will want us to vote for them come 2024 next year. So our workers, remember in 2020, there's nothing that we did in 2020, but we got zero salary increase. 2021, we were given 1.5, but we didn't even raise a hand. We just lamented in our corridors. 2022 as well, there was 3% that was shoved, implemented unilaterally. Still, we are tired. Even those who were not joining the strike that was started by Nehawu were not joining because they were caught in between the hard place and the rock. But nonetheless, they were saying, yay, we also want to fight for what Nehawu members are fighting for. That is why tomorrow, almost everyone will be joining the strike because government continues to disrespect not only unions, but workers, not only workers, but the community at large. Why are they bringing police forces? Why are they even bringing the military? Why are we not sitting down and saying 10%, taking into consideration that we have been getting like poverty level salary increase for the past 3 years? Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. Let's bring in Lerato. Lerato, I understand that you are from the Young Nurses Indaba Trade Union. Look, the issue of inflation sitting at around 6.9%, right? Main contributors, food, transport, etc. And many are saying 3% is just not enough to keep our heads above water. Your take, if you can unmute Lerato. There you go.
Thank you so much, and good evening to all the viewers. I think there's, for us as health and allied workers in Indaba Trade Union, the name change is no more Young Nurses Indaba Trade Union. We are very clear to say this mass action, this strike is long overdue. Healthcare workers for the past decade have never gotten a double-digit salary. What they've been getting is literally a slap in their face. From 2018, even the agreement that could not be honored in 2020 was really a sellout agreement because it only gave workers below 7%. Now, I think Richard already said the other years, but what we are seeing here, we are seeing a very arrogant employer that is actually undermining collective agreement. And you've been asking, don't we have avenues where workers can be heard, especially essential workers? And I can tell you, there is a bargaining chamber that does not serve that purpose. When unions are there, they are being bullied, and if they don't sign, the employer simply implements. So I think also the unions, 70% of workers, particularly young workers, are not unionized. They're not unionized because they're asking themselves, if you as union can be bullied so much, you do not have any muscle, you don't have teeth. And I think we've seen a very deepening, lower levels of people having really no interest in what we call unionism.
Right.
It's not only an undermining of unions and of workers, but also the strike. When workers are up in arms, remember, this is not a healthcare strike. It's a public sector strike. So all sectors are affected as long as you're a public worker, including police and the very military they're actually mentioning. Our biggest fear here is that even if Nehawu or unions can move aside, workers are going to have a leaderless strike, and that the government or the departments, several departments, will not be able to stand that. We are asking, and I think our humble plea is straightforward. Listen to what the unions are saying. Give workers the 10%. Actually, it's nothing compared to how you've been robbing them. And we get this to normality. And I think one of the speakers actually said, listen, we are not, we might be saying, that the CEO of Charlotte Maxeke is painting a very gloomy picture. But that picture that she's painting is a picture of the lives of workers, especially healthcare workers. Every day, people are dying at our watch. There is no electricity in those hospitals, and we know for a fact that the government is not coming to the party.
Lerato, thank you very much indeed. Ramela, let's go to you. And something that the CEO of Charlotte Maxeke was saying that she was trying to grapple with in terms of how do you balance the issue of grievances versus supplying people with healthcare services. We're told that about 45 million people here in this country largely depend on public health facilities. How do you strike that balance? If you can unmute Ramela. Oops, I think we go ahead. All right, it seems that we have some gremlin. Okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, I would like to say that most of our patients are from the rural areas, and they depend on the public sector to get their healthcare services. However, I can say that government should come in place to actually compensate our nurses and doctors and all the healthcare workers. Because during COVID, we stood and support our government. We didn't sit back and say that, hey, we fear to lose our lives, but we stood in and support this government, even if it was difficult for us. I think it is very much important that the government should come in place to say that it's high time that we compensate our healthcare workers because they've been doing good to our communities.
Right. Let's bring in Dr. Mahlati with regards to what you've heard from the representatives here tonight. Legitimate grievances, would you say? How can government step up and help?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I need to say is that I hope we all know that our economy is not performing well. If we are going to be able to have a bigger cake to share amongst everybody, one thing that we need to do as South Africans, both public and private, ordinary citizens, let's actually grow the economy to expand the tax base. Public monies, public funding is based on taxes that are collected. The little taxes that you collect, the less that you are going to distribute. Number two, we've got to close the taps of corruption that are taking place all over the show, both public and private. And there are people who actually show themselves as being innocent as if they are not participating in that. Even the mere pinching of a towel from a hospital and you go and use it at home as your private one is actually a problem. The second issue is that You see, the issue of leading a strike is important. You need to provide leadership. I'm not sure if, really we could clearly say that the strike as we experienced last week of ill people, sick people being prevented from getting care, you could say it's a strike that has been provided with proper leadership. That one, I will say it upfront, because I think there's been a gap there. I don't think the leadership has played its role. Yes, raising very legitimate concerns, but those concerns cannot justify them to really target their anger at, at patients. The last one I would like to comment on is salaries. I think what's important and the approach that we're taking from the department is to look at how to improve the overall conditions. You can increase the salaries 100 times or whatever, but if you don't provide the tools of trade so that where those professionals can be able to diagnose appropriately, can be able to make those interventions to make sure that you provide appropriate chemicals for cleaners to work, it will actually come out to, being unsuccessful. So it's very important that we look holistically, not just at salaries, because salaries alone are not going to solve the problem.
Doc, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Leklape, a holistic approach seemingly from the health department's point of view. How do you think government has been handling this strike so far?
That's a tough one. Employees should not have their lives threatened when they are going to work. So there's been a failure from the state in that part of protecting the employees. The citizens that need emergency care should be able to access emergency care. There's a failure in securing safe access to hospitals from the state. But to our colleagues who are public servants, there's no need to break the law to make your point. So they need to ensure, the president spoke about the picketing rules. Let them be applied. I would love to hear the president say they are not going to condone criminality from their members. I'd like to hear him say no members of the public should be intimidated, no infrastructure should be destroyed, no people that need to do life-saving will be prevented from going to work. And that's where we should. But you started by saying 85% have no access to care. And I think we need to be truthful that we, the state and the unions, are waging war on the ordinary citizens because they are the ones that are dependent on the public sector. Me and you, we not depend on the public sector for our own healthcare. The state has preserved apartheid legislation. We got medical aids. We go private. Whether it's chronic conditions or non-acute, we have access to care. And that is where the inhumanity lies. And as we look at this issue, we should not lose our humanity and forget that there's 15% of South Africans that are not impacted in the slightest by all these issues. How did we get there? How do we get to people that sit out there, that are on permit, that sit in parliament, that go to a different thing? And
get skin in the game.
Human beings are driven by self-interest. As long as the public officials, me and you, who have privileges, have no skin in the game, this is the new form of apartheid. This is what it was about when I grew up, where 80% didn't matter and 20% mattered. We now have 85% that don't matter and only 15% matter. How has it changed?
Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. I guess the big takeaway from that is wage war on poverty, not on poor people, right? Thank you very much indeed for your time, to our guests as well. We've fast run out of time. But before we go, my brothers and sisters, here's my take. Altruism, the selfless concern for the well-being of others. Material. Why? Because self-interest can't be our resting pulse. I hear the counter-argument. How can I care about strangers when my family is struggling to survive because I don't have enough money? It's a reality we have to face up with. But again, I say, why should it be a zero-sum game? Zero-sum relating to a situation in which whatever is gained by one side is lost by the other. Protests, yes, but it can't be at the expense of our mothers, our fathers, our children. On the flip side, to the authorities, those controlling the purse string, we must not forget that during COVID, healthcare workers were on the front line at a time when that virus was exposing the deep fault lines, hunger, poverty, inequality. And through all the uncertainty, they gave us hope, guiding us through the storm. And now that the clouds are starting to clear, let's not forget that as we keep a weather eye, one would say, on our collective future. If you miss anything, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube. Until next week, take care. Bye-bye.